On the night of November 26, 2008, 10 terrorists made an amphibious landing onto the jetties of Mumbai, India, and proceeded to carry out sophisticated, simultaneously deadly attacks on multiple targets, including the city's main railway station, two of its most prominent hotels, a popular outdoor cafe, a movie theatre, and a Jewish community center. Now, as the world watched on television, these 10 terrorists paralyzed a great metropolis of 12 million people and murdered nearly 200 of them. Now, one of the locations under the siege was the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, which was occupied by terrorists for over 3 days, resulting in 34 people killed and 28 injured. Now, the opulent Taj Hotel was full of people from all over the world when the terrorists arrived at the hotel. Now, besides those staying and working at the venue, passerbys ran to safety into the hotel as they believed that it was the safest place to be. Gunmen seized the hotel with hundreds of people trapped inside, firing and hurling grenades at random. Now, the siege at the hotel lasted for 2 days and 3 nights and was covered extensively by international media. Now, according to the hotel managers, none of the Taj employees had fled the scene to protect themselves during the attack. They all stayed at the hotel to help the guest. Now, the employees placed the safety of the guest over their own well-being, thereby risking and in some cases laying down their lives. Now, on that day, the then chairman and CEO of Hindustan Unilever hosted a dinner at the hotel. Now, Unilever's directors, senior executives and their spouses were bidding farewell to Patrick Sesko, the CEO, and welcoming Paul Polman, CEO-elect. Now, about 35 Taj Mumbai employees, led by a 24-year-old banquet manager, Malika Jagat, were assigned to manage the event on the second floor banquet room. Around 9:30 p.m., as they served the main course, they heard what they thought were fireworks at a nearby wedding. In reality, these were the first gunshots from a terrorist who was storming the Taj. The staff quickly realized something was wrong. Jagat had the doors locked and the lights turned off. She asked everyone to lie down quietly under the tables and refrain from using their cell phones. She insisted that husbands and wives separate to reduce the risk to families. The group stayed there all night, listening to the terrorists rampaging through the hotel, hurling grenades, firing automatic weapons, and tearing the place apart. Now, the Taj staff kept calm and constantly went around offering water and asking people if they needed anything else. Early the next morning, a fire started in the hallway outside, forcing the group to try to climb out of the windows. A fire crew spotted them and with its ladders helped the trapped people escape quickly. The staff evacuated the guests first and no casualties resulted. It was my responsibility. I may have been the youngest person in the room, but I was still doing my job, said Jagat. Now, in another upscale Japanese restaurant in the hotel, a warning call from an hotel operator alerted the staff that terrorists had entered the building and were heading towards the restaurant. 48-year-old Thomas Verghese, the senior waiter at the restaurant, immediately instructed his 50-odd guests to crouch under the tables, and he directed employees to form a human cordon around them. 4 hours later, security men asked Verghese if he could get the guest out of the hotel, and he decided to use a spiral staircase near the restaurant to evacuate the customers first and then the hotel staff. Mr. Verghese insisted that he would be the last man to leave, but he never did get out. The terrorists gunned him down as he reached the bottom of the staircase. Hemant Oberoi and his staff formed a human barrier to shield the guest. Oberoi, the head chef, recalled how he had brushed off what he thought was news of a film crew standing outside one of his restaurants, only to be told, "No sir, it's not that kind of shooting." Oberoi said that his staff had immediately switched off the restaurant lights and locked the front doors in order to evade the terrorists' attention while guests took cover under the tables. Now, speaking on the podcast titled Crisis, he told host Andy Coulson of how he had offered his staff the chance to flee. but all had stayed behind to help. 7 of the Oberoi staff lost their lives at the hotel in trying to help the guest. The general manager of the Taj, Mr. Karambir Singh Kang, worked to save people even after his wife and 2 sons, who lived on the 6th floor of the same hotel, died in the fire set by terrorists. He supervised the evacuation of guests and coordinated the efforts of the firefighters amidst the chaos. Kang led the rescue efforts until noon the next day. Only then did he call his parents to tell them that the terrorists had killed his wife and children. Telephone operators too stayed at their post, alerting guests to lock doors and not to step out. Dozens of workers, waiters, room cleaners who all knew the back exits and paths through the hotel chose to stay in the building under siege until their customers were safe. As many as 11 Taj Mumbai employees laid down their lives while helping over 1,000 guests escape. Friends, true leadership is action, not position. Each employee demonstrated unprecedented heroism and true leadership. They were the very models of ethical and selfless behavior. Most of them were leaders without big titles. They led from where they were planted, and regardless of whether they had a formal title or not, they showed up when it mattered. Today, we are surrounded by people who call themselves leaders. But in reality, we are suffering from a scarcity of genuine leadership. In our secular society, we tend to think of leaders as somebody who is well connected, who is powerful, who is charismatic, or is very wealthy. We judge our leaders by what they have. But a true leader should be judged by what he has not, namely ego, arrogance, and self-interest. A true leader sees his work as a selfless service towards a higher purpose. As the sages say, leadership is not power and dominance. It is servitude. It is not about position, but rather about disposition. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about leadership is the belief that leadership comes simply from having a position or a title. But nothing could be further from truth. A place on the top or title doesn't make you a leader. The law of influence clearly states that the true meaning of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. You do not have to be held hostage to your circumstance or position. You do not have to be the CEO to lead effectively. And you can learn to make an impact through your leadership, even if you report to someone who is not a good leader. What's the secret? You learn to develop your influence from wherever you are in the organization. Now, in the book The 360-Degree Leader by John Maxwell, he recounts an incident he once read. President Woodrow Wilson had a housekeeper who constantly lamented that she and her husband didn't possess more prestigious positions in life. One day, the lady approached the president after she heard that the Secretary of Labor had resigned from administration. President Wilson, she said, my husband is perfect for the vacant position. He is a laboring man, knows what labor is, and understands laboring people. Please consider him when you appoint the new Secretary of Labor. I appreciate your recommendation, answered the president, but you must remember the Secretary of Labor is an important position. It requires an influential person. But the housekeeper said, if you made my husband the Secretary of Labor, he would be an influential person. People who have no leadership experience have this tendency to overestimate the importance of a leadership title. That was the case for President Wilson's housekeeper. She thought that leadership was a reward that someone of importance could grant. But influence doesn't work that way. You may be able to grant someone a position, but you cannot grant him real leadership. We could come up with a million reasons to be discouraged, dissatisfied, and disengaged with our present jobs. We can keep complaining that we have no title and nor opportunity to lead. But one of the greatest freedoms each of us has is the freedom to choose how we view our roles in the world and the power we all have to make positive decisions in whatever conditions we happen to find ourselves. Remember, the bottom line is this: leadership is a choice you make, not a place you sit. Anyone can choose to become a leader wherever he is. You can make a difference no matter where you are.